When you play the Game of Thrones,
Subscribe and like.
you die. There is no middle ground.
Welcome back to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about why I think the show did not necessarily handle Renly's death and really the follow-up and even the aftermath of the entire Renly-Stannis plotline in Season 2 all that well compared to the book. Now, a part of this has been fueled by my Clash of Kings reread, which if you want to see, it is on my second channel. That will be in the description. But one thing that's very apparent from A Clash of Kings is it takes a lot more time to develop both the characters of Stannis and Renly. Whether that's in book 1 or whether that's in book 2, they do much more to actually build up the characters than Season 1 or Season 2 does of the show. And I think you can understand this given the fact that Renly is not necessarily a character we spend a ton of time with in the books, but he's definitely like a major character. Like, he's a main character of book 2 in terms of his significance. And it's really clear that in the show, they just didn't do that. Like, there's a lot of scenes that are cut from Catelyn and Renly's meeting. We don't get as much into Renly as a character. And yes, we do see a good amount with the character of Renly, like how he's trying to help the people in his army and how he's well loved by his army and all of those things. And we do see kind of the surface level stuff, like he's very materialistic. Now, they don't dive into it as much as George does in the books, but it's all there. It's just not as deep and complex as it is in the book. And the same can apply to Stannis. Stannis, all throughout the early season of Season 2, has scenes that are either merged together or cut. So for instance, Davos 1 and also Crescent 1 basically play out as one sequence in episode 1, which is crazy, given the fact that Crescent's open to A Clash of Kings, one of the longest chapters of the series, if not the longest. It's one of the best opens to a book, I think, of the entire series, and it's just a great introduction into the character of Stannis. What the show does is they cut out a ton of his backstory, or they put it in weird places to where it isn't as interesting if we had known about all this stuff beforehand. So for instance, when we lead up to the Renly conflict, we've already learned a lot about Stannis through the eyes of characters like, well, for instance, Ned and the Small Council in book 1. And then we get it with the opposite side, the people that favor Stannis with Crescent and Davos. Then we see it through Renly and Catelyn's eyes. We see a lot about the character of Stannis before we even ever actually get to the Renly speech chapter. And the same is the case of Renly as well. But not to the extent we do of Stannis, of course, but even that Crescent chapter, Crescent also knew Renly as a young child. Renly was somebody that also Crescent looks at as kind of his own child, or of sorts. And so what I think is so great about the way the book does it is the book paints what's going to happen really from the open. From the open, we're already seeing this foreshadowing that Stannis is going to try and kill Renly. It's kind of subtly thrown in there, but you don't know how Stannis maybe plans to do it or how that's going to go down. And George is a very clever thing where he gives us Davos 1, he gives us Crescent, and then we don't see a Stannis POV, like the Davos side of the camp, until after Renly is dead. Because he wants to hide the mystery of what's going to happen to Renly. The show never does that. The show blatantly shows Stannis and Melisandre sleeping together to have the shadow baby, openly shows Davos bringing Melisandre to then kill Renly. All that kind of stuff happens directly on screen right in front of your face. And so a lot of the mystery is taken out of book 2 for the show, right? And the show, it just does away with it. It just tells you what's going to happen. And so I think one thing that the show did not do well at all is the entire Renly Stannis, which is the strongest part of book 2. They didn't really do it as well as it could have been. And not to say that it's bad. It's not bad in Season 2. It's just like a subpar, in my opinion. It's not as good as it should have been, especially with how everything is laid out there for D&D. So let's go through what happens in the book. In the book, we get Renly's Peaches chapter, a chapter that, yes, the show adapted, but didn't really get the essence of. They didn't understand what that chapter was supposed to be about in the show. Where you have Renly's Peach, it's the climax of that chapter in a lot of ways, where Stannis thinks that Renly is drawing a sword, and it seems like we're going to break out into violence, but Renly pulls out a peach. That signifies both Renly and Stannis's characters, right? Renly having too many peaches, overindulging and all of that stuff, whereas Stannis never has any happiness. He never has a peach. And so that's something that's great, because then when we see all these like veiled threats going on, and the tension is rising. We haven't been with the Stannis camp for so long, since more or less the opening third of the book, that you may not even remember what the actual plan is, or even what Stannis might be planning to do, because you're seeing it all now through Catelyn and the Renly camp side of things. And so Renly then is assassinated in front of Catelyn and Brienne. And this almost comes out of nowhere, almost, right? There's this foreboding feeling that Catelyn is getting, and the tension is rising. But then all of a sudden, as we see the shadow creep in, it kills Renly. You don't know how exactly this happened, and yes, you're assuming that Stannis killed Renly, but you don't know what was done to do any of this. It comes much more as a huge plot twist in the middle of a Clash of Kings than it does in season 2. This is a huge moment. It's taking out Renly, who easily would have beaten the Lannisters, and if Renly and Stannis had been able to get, together and fight the Lannisters, they would have been unstoppable. This is a huge turning point and spells really the downward spiral for the Baratheons and even the Starks to a degree. So it's a huge moment. And in the show, it's just not really that huge of a moment. It is definitely like a shock value in the show, of course, but it lacks a lot of the emotion because Renly is an interesting character in the book, not so much in the show, because there is more that's put into the depth of that moment and the despair that Crescent, everything he was trying to stop in the opening chapter of A Clash of Kings, has come to pass. And so it's great because then we see Catelyn flee and she goes back to Riverrun and we see the fallout from that side of things. Then we go back to Davos 2, and I just recorded this video for Davos 2 A Clash of Kings and I edited it, and I really wanted to talk a little bit more on the main channel about it because it's so great. And so you come back, Davos is trying to piece together what actually happened. He hasn't been able to get close to the king, and you see that Stannis seems to be a changed individual, that everything that happened with Renly's death took a toll on Stannis, not just because of grief for losing his younger brother and the person he once was, but also there seems to be some underlying magic that was happening that seems to be corrupting and or maybe destroying Stannis as he looks older and almost half a corpse. And it gets worse because we see another assassination done on Sir Courtney Penrose. You really see a reflection of the Renly's Peach chapter, but now you see it from the Stannis camp, and you finally get that big reveal of what everything has been going on, that Stannis, with the help of Melisandre, has been making these shadow babies, and that's what assassinated Renly. It kind of concludes, well, not fully concludes, because you don't know how that magic necessarily works at this point of the book, and we still don't necessarily know how the shadow baby stuff works all that much, but we can speculate on it. But it fulfills that mystery, and it does a great job of setting the tone then for the Battle of the Blackwater, the rest of A Clash of Kings, all that stuff. And so I hope you guys kind of enjoyed this. This was kind of to mirror season 2, book 2. When I get done with my Clash of Kings reread, which probably won't be till next year, I do want to look at season 2 with a critical eye and go at it from the point of view of what did they get right, what did they get wrong from the book, because it's made very clear that in my favorite parts of A Clash of Kings, they did not adapt in season 2 at all. Like the Catelyn plotline and also the Stannis plotline, which are the strongest two outside of Tyrion, which Tyrion is the one that definitely gets adapted the best. Catelyn and Stannis are definitely the side that was not adapted all that well. And season 2 has its other strengths in terms of changes they make with showing us more of Robb and some of Arya's stuff. But I do want to sit here and ask you guys the question. Is season 2 as good as we remember it? I know I've thought about it very fondly, and I still think season 2, regardless of my criticisms, is still a great season of television, all of that. But I think compared to the book, it definitely falters a lot more than, say, Game of Thrones, the first book, and even Storm of Swords at points. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.